Welcome to the Thrill of Driving podcast, and this week we have the boss of Volkswagen Motorsport in India, Sirish Vissa.
Thank you.
Sirish,
pleasure being here.
Thanks for being on our podcast. Is it still Volkswagen Motorsport or is it Skoda Volkswagen Motorsport?
No, it is still Volkswagen Motorsport.
So you're still running the Volkswagen Motorsport operations here in Pune?
Yes, we are.
And it is a decade that y'all have been in India, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe it's been a decade, but yes, it has been. We've completed 10 years at the end of 2019.
And 10 years as the only factory motorsport operation in the country still.
Yes, unfortunately.
So we'll come back to that as to what your frustrations are and the frustrations with other manufacturers. Let's start with Volkswagen Motorsport's journey in India. You all obviously started off with the Polo,
right,
with the diesel engine,
yes.
Then you moved to the petrol engine, then the Vento, then the Ameo, and now it is coming a full circle back to the Polo.
Yes, back to the Polo, and the new race car is going to be unveiled at the Auto Expo. In, what is it, about maybe
just
a week's
week?
time?
Yeah, just a week. Why back to the Polo?
Well, in a way, it is for two reasons. The first being that, we wanted to start the second decade with something that was familiar. Mm-hmm. And also the other reason being the technical reason, which is the fact that we've sort of evolved the program from having a car that was really on edge with the Polo when we started, to then going to the Vento, which was easy for some newcomers to get comfortable with. Then we made a lot of progress in terms of chassis side of it when we went to the Ameo, because we got the Ameo to have the characteristics of both the Vento, which was very easy for somebody to get comfortable with, but still somewhat on edge for the more experienced drivers. And so when we started the new decade, we said, okay, it makes sense to go back to the most dynamic car we have, which is the biggest action model we have, which is the Polo. And so now we've actually started working on the suspension and chassis setup and everything. And we should be doing a lot more testing with it. We will be as soon as we are done with Auto Expo.
So you're moving back to the Polo. Mm-hmm. The specs of the car remain sort of similar to the Ameo Cup that we've seen for the past 2-3 years?
Well, it's something I really can't talk about, just because we are unveiling the car in a week's time. But I can tell you this much, it is going to be a lot more fun to drive than the Ameo.
What is your prediction for the lap time? How much is it going to drop down by? Because every car has to get quicker, right? There's no option to that.
It is going to be quicker.
Yeah.
How quick it's going to be actually depends on a combination of factors. Mm-hmm. We've been working with MRF on a new set of tires.
Okay.
And because we haven't had a chance to actually do a lot of running with the car, we don't know yet in terms of how, I would say, predictable the lap time, and the car is going to use the tires over a long run. So that's what we are going to be working on. Once we have that sorted out, then I'll be able to tell you. So give me about 2 weeks' time and I'll have a better answer for you.
Cool. So Sirish, you've been more or less involved right from the start of Volkswagen Motorsports project in India. You've seen the evolution. Earlier, the cars used to come almost ready-made from Germany, and sort of assembly used to happen in India. How much has that progressed? What all do you do here in Pune at your factory in Chakan?
See, that I think is the biggest step we've made, right? Like you said, the initial batch of cars all came from Germany. Then when we moved from the TDI to the TSI, all the parts came from Germany, and actually some of the technicians and engineers came over. They supervised the complete build of the car. All of the development was done there, right? But when I sort of came in and took over 2014, beginning of 2014, 6 years now, I set myself a task that we need to make the program sustainable.
Okay.
I couldn't afford to spend crazy amount of money to get all the development done in Germany. So we had to look at other ways we could do it. So the Vento was the sort of the first step, where we did all the chassis work here, and we carried over the drivetrain and the electronics.
By chassis work, do you want to elaborate on it?
So with the Vento, that was the first car, in fact, that we had a welded-in roll cage.
Okay.
And all of the prep work on the chassis was done here. So we did all the pipe bending, we did all the setup of the roll cage, welded it in. And after we had all of this done, we actually had to fine tune and set the suspension in terms of your spring rates, your damping, everything here. So all of that work we did here, which was the first car that we did. And we did, I think, probably a better job in a way than what the guys from my colleagues from Germany did, because Dieter, who's normally our test driver for all of the motorsport cars that come out of Hanover, he's an ex-rally driver, right? So his approach to driving on a track also is like he would approach a tarmac stage. So he comes in, throws the car in. So it's phenomenal to drive, but it's a handful for the average guy. Whereas when we set it up, we sort of took into account that most of the drivers don't have the skill set of a Dieter Depping. So we set it up to be more manageable, which was what the big step was that we had in terms of the way the cars were. And I think that was a good way forward for us, because we had also evolved as a championship, going from having everybody coming from karting to having complete newcomers come to the championship. So that was the first step. So we did all of this chassis setup here. So we did a lot of testing with the car, where we had to go back and redo the spring rates, redo our anti-roll bars, redo what dampers we use.
Who are the guys who are responsible for the final handling setup of the car?
It's a combination of us. So I get involved because I am a race engineer at heart. So I get involved, but I've got, at the moment, I've got Manush, who's one of my race engineers, Manush, Vishnu, and I've got two young ladies who work also with me, Gunjan and Akriti. So this team are the ones keep people responsible for all of this, but I'm always there as a mentor, sort of to guide them in the right direction, because obviously, I mean, we are trying to do this in a very short time frame. We don't have the luxury of having a year of testing. So I get involved with it just to sort of fine tune it and point them in the right direction. But these are the guys that are doing the hard work.
And in terms of the drivers, who are the ones who are setting up the car?
So what we try and do is, like, you know, for us, we keep talking about how our program is to develop talent and find talent. So what we do actually is we take our ex-champions and put them into this development driver role. Karthik was very instrumental, for example, when we first came and we were partnered with MRF. We had a lot of tire development to do. So we're evaluating multiple compounds, multiple, I would say, construction, all of this stuff. And all of it is very difficult. I mean, you have to have a very, very sensitive, as Hans Stuck would say, popometer, to be able to feel what these tires are doing. And so Karthik does a phenomenal job. Of course, we have Raymond Banerjee, multiple national champion. And then we've got the rest of them also. We've got your Ishan and Anindit and all of them that have come through the series that end up doing all this development work with us. So it works both ways. So one way is it gives them seat time. For us, it's great because now we are not only teaching them about being a race car driver, but we're teaching them about being a development driver, which is a completely different level. And so we use these guys, and they are the ones responsible for making the cars as good as they are today.
So we were talking about the Vento and how you developed the Vento over time. You talked about the chassis setup. What about the engines and transmission for it?
So for the Vento, we basically carried over what was already done for the Polo TSI. The Ameo was where we did the entire thing here. So we changed over to the 1.8 turbo from the GTI. So the issue then was that, first of all, that engine wasn't available in our assembly line over here. So we had to import all the engines. But the feather in the cap for the entire team is that I think we went from having a concept of what we would do with the Ameo Cup car in, I think, probably in November. Which is when we got the sign off from the board, to by the end of March, we actually had, I think, 4 prototypes ready, and we had done about 10,000 kilometers of track testing with the cars. And from March then till May, we went from having 4 cars to having 25 race cars ready.
So that is like an accelerated development program.
Yes.
Within your Volkswagen Motorsport universe, has there been another example of a team ramping up so quickly with a new car?
I think probably the only example would be the IDR, because the IDR, I think they did it in about 120 days from concept to having the car ready for Pikes Peak. But the difference is that, in Germany, you've got lots of people that have a tremendous amount of motorsport experience. Whereas in India, we still don't have professional motorsport. So you can't pull from this, pool of experienced motorsport engineers, designers, and so on to be able to do something like that. So my guys, all of whom started their careers in motorsport with us, and some of them, that's the first time they've been involved in motorsport. Fortunately, we've gotten a lot of them to come out of the student design program, design projects like your Formula Bharat and Formula
the Baja
SAE and Baja and all this stuff, right? So we look for that because that's when I get engineers who have a little bit of hands-on experience. But we have all these newcomers without motorsport experience to come and put together the entire car. So for the Ameo, we did all of the mapping on the engine. We had to fit in the sequential gearbox. So that in itself, just designing all of that for it, packaging to fit everything in the car was a challenge. Because very tight. I think we've got probably 3 mil on one side and about 8 mil on the other side between the chassis rails to fit the whole thing in. So that was a challenge. Then when you start looking at the other side, which is the control side of it, all of the wiring harness we did and manufactured in Pune. We did the setup of all the electronics. We had to set the paddle shift and the actuator up to do the gear changes. And then once all of this was ready, of course, we had to go test, and then we had to set the launch control up because while it's a fantastic setup with the paddle shift and the turbo engine and all of this, how do we make this so that a complete newcomer can get comfortable in it? And the other step was, how do we make the car more robust, more reliable, so that we don't have a nightmare in terms of maintenance? So we had to design the launch so that anybody could launch it without having to wear out the clutch or slip the clutch and so on. Because unlike everybody else, normally when you guys all were doing rallying or anything else, you've got 2 or 3 technicians that are there per car. I run the program with less than a half a technician per car. So I have to have everything absolutely bulletproof. And I think probably some of my Le Mans experience counts there. But so we did all of this and we did it here. And I'm really proud of what we achieved because 3 years we ran the car. I think the only failure we had was the one turbo on one of the test cars, and that failed at the beginning of last year. So after 2 years, after all the testing, we did 2 complete years of using it to do taxi rides, everything, and then we had a failure, and that's the turbo we were playing around doing some anti-lag and all this other stuff with. Other than that, I think we had 1 gearbox oil seal fail. That's it. Those were the only 2 problems we had.
So that also showcases the reliability of your road engines, right? Because the 1.8 is a road engine.
Yes.
It's not a pure play motorsport engine, right?
Yeah.
So that is what they say, win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yes.
Does that work in India?
I think it does to a certain extent because if you look at the Polo, there is still a lot of demand for the Polo GT.
Yeah.
So I think it still does to a certain extent, but probably I think the market in India is sort of evolving to the point where it will make more of a difference now because we are transitioning away from looking at cars as just basic A to B transport to now being an extension of your personality, right? That's when all of this makes a difference because people want something that reflects their character, and anybody who is looking at something sporty that wants something more fun to drive, of course, the obvious choice is a Polo.
With your Ameo Cup program, which you're now transitioning to the Polo Cup program, how many engineers do you have working on this? In total, how big is the Volkswagen Motorsport team?
The entire team is, I think we are down to now 27 or 28 people. Okay.
And at your heyday, y'all were how many?
We used to have, I think, close to 50 people when we were running the Cup series initially.
So is that a reflection of the times that you were in, where budgets are cut everywhere?
For sure. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when we started, when we were launching Volkswagen brand in India, there was a lot more money to play with. And then as we've sort of evolved, we've had to be more and more lean. And we've always challenged ourselves more, because when we started also, we only ran the Cup and nothing else. Today we have the Cup series, we are running the ITC program, we are doing the rally program, and we are doing other development work. So we're doing a lot more with a lot less. But you have to remember, when I say 29 people, it isn't 29 engineers and working only on the engineering side, right? So the same people, the team of 29 includes 2 truck drivers, includes 2 people who handle all of my parts and logistics. It includes people who do sponsorship marketing, my social media, my communications, and also run the cars. So actually, in terms of technicians, or in terms of the guys working physically on the cars, I've probably got, I think, 8 plus 2, about 10 people. Then I've got, like I said, about 4 race engineers that are with me, or engineers that are with me to do all of this. I've got 1 young designer who's with me to do all the detailed part design side of it. And then, of course, I've got my management team to manage the workshop, manage the team. And so, yeah, it's a pretty small outfit.
Yeah, but you're managing.
Oh, of course.
And especially in this day when Volkswagen Group have scaled down their motorsport activities all across the world. In fact, recently they said they would not do any racing with internal combustion engines.
Right.
How do you sort of sideline that global diktat?
Well, one advantage is that we've been completely self-reliant, right? So none of our budget comes from Germany, from Volkswagen Motorsport Germany. So they have a task, because in Germany and globally, for sure, Volkswagen is changing as a company.
Yeah.
The focus is on e-mobility. So to support the e-mobility aspects of that, the motorsport program also has evolved, Go e-mobility. And so that's what they are doing. However, we've been completely self-sufficient. So our goal here is to create and make sure that the brand resonates with our target audience. So one of the things that, we always talk about Volkswagen DNA, and which is that, we are our build quality, our fun to driveness, and of course safety. And for us, the motorsport, whether it's rallying or racing, that's the best way to showcase these qualities. And so we still do that. We focus on that. And as we evolve in India to do other things, we would be ready in terms of motorsport as well. We've always been the trendsetter, so to speak, right? Because when we launched the program in 2010, the perception was that diesel engines are only for taxis.
True, yeah.
We sort of proved that no, diesels are fun.
Are you allowed to talk about diesel?
Of course.
Yeah, sure.
It's part of our record, right? It's what we've done, right? So what's happened after that is a separate story.
Yeah. So after that, we can't talk about diesel.
We can't talk about it. But no, I mean, look, reality is we started with the diesel.
Yeah.
We used the program to showcase that diesels are fun.
Yes.
And they're not just slow.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about DSG, right? And we used the program to showcase our DSG technology. And we ran the gearboxes for 5 years, and all we did was do a oil change and a filter change at the end of every season. Of course, the one talking point that stayed consistent from 2012 till date is TSI.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the heart of Volkswagen.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is something we are super proud of.
And especially now that all other manufacturers are jumping on the turbo petrol bandwagon with small turbo petrols, with the Hyundai Motor Group, with Hyundai, Kia, they're making a big play with turbo petrols. And y'all have had it in your history for very long.
For sure.
Obviously now at the Auto Expo, we'll see the new turbo petrol, the 1 liter TSI that will be there in the Polo. I'm sure you can't talk about it, but everybody knows that the smaller TSI is coming because of the BS6 emission norms.
Definitely.
And I'm sure that will also find a place in motorsport, because everything that y'all make, y'all are racing or rallying it in some form of the other.
Yeah. So we in fact, we've already started working on the 1 liter TSI, and because that is our mainstream engine for India. And
that will be made also in India, so it'll be
Yes.
even more India specific.
For sure. And the best part is it's more accessible for us,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So that's what we look at.
Yeah.
And if we are making engines here, it's
Yeah.
great because
Yeah.
then I can go and get parts.
Yeah.
So we are looking at that. We've actually started doing a lot of work with the 1 liter TSI in terms of using it for motorsport use, because there is always a lead time for us from the time we start work to the point where we are happy and we can hand it off to a customer. So we've already started work on that. We've been working on it now for about a month and a half. So that's ongoing, and we will hopefully have it ready for rallying in the next 2 or 2.5 months.
So do I get a car from you, Sirish?
Well, let's work on it.
You're on camera, so yes or no?
See, that's why it's a maybe.
So that is on the racing front.
Yeah.
You also do the ITC. Last year, you launched the Vento with the turbo petrol engine.
Right.
The first race, y'all creamed everybody.
Yep.
What happened after that? Why did you not win the championship?
Look, we won the championship.
Okay.
We won the championship. We didn't expect to win the championship, and I think we lucked into it. But we did win the championship. But for us, honestly, like I said, we have a tiny team. So our bread and butter is the single make championship. And every time we have work to do with that, everything else stops. So ideally, I would love to have done a lot more development work with the Vento ITC, but practical reasons, because I don't have enough people, we don't have enough hours in the day to work, we couldn't actually do any more development on the car. And the only weakness of the car was in terms of handling.
Okay.
In terms of power, we haven't touched the engine from the time we first mapped it with the restrictor, and that's it. In terms of gearbox, again, the gearbox we use is the same sequential gearbox out of the Cup car. That is a bulletproof part. We haven't had any issues with it. Only difference is in ITC spec, you have a manual gear lever. But the handling side of it, we made some progress towards the last round, but I think it was too little too late. So now we've been trying to do some stuff on the side, but also at the moment we are limited in terms of resource because now everything is going towards a new Cup series. So that's always the part where we are trying to catch up. Whereas somebody else, our competitors, they've got a team of guys and they're only working on the one car, and they can afford to spend a lot of time and work on the little details that make the car quicker. So hopefully, some of the work that we have done at the end of last year and what we have put in over the course of the last, I guess, 4 months, we should have something a little bit quicker.
So you won the championship, so it was job done, right?
Yes.
So that was ticked off your box. But for Volkswagen, as a factory, to enter a series, don't you go in with all guns blazing and with that aim that we have to win this?
Well, normally yes. But for us in India, like I said, we do things differently, right? The focus on us for entering ITC was not so much to win the championship, but was to ensure that we develop the car and we prove the potential of the car, because ultimately our focus is on trying to develop this and make the technology and the car more accessible for everybody else. For us, the customer side of it is more important.
Okay.
Right? If there was somebody else that was there as a factory, for sure we would be all guns blazing and we would put a lot of development work into it. But today it doesn't make sense, right? To throw huge amounts of resources into this and beat who? You've got guys who are investing their hard-earned money to come and race in this championship. So what is the fairness, if you will, of me putting all the resources of a big manufacturer to compete and cream some guy who's investing his own hard-earned money? It doesn't make sense. Which is why while we want to be there, we are there to support the sport, ensure the sport is growing. We are not throwing, for example, all of the resources we could at that program.
So you mentioned this at the start about other manufacturers. That must be one of your greatest frustrations, that you don't have anybody to compete against. Now, if you look at it from a layman's point of view, it'd be great, right? You don't have somebody to compete with, so you're winning every race. But in terms of improving the breed, don't you need a strong rival to push you forward? And also to get more support from your board, because I'm sure you are always asked questions about the budget that you spend and what all you're putting into the program, right?
No, I mean, I think, look, there are two aspects to it, right? We are always improving the breed. And any competition is worthwhile competition. We're always learning new things. But the dynamic is different. For example, when we were competing, we had the guys from Race Concepts, Arjun, Balu, and we were racing against them. Also the team from Arka, Leela's guys, they put a fantastic car together, and they actually came in and showed how quick the NA car was at the end of last year. But racing against them, mentally, we have a different approach. Whereas if it was a manufacturer there and they are putting in their development money in, then for sure, then it becomes more about bragging rights, right? Then we would actually be in it to win the championship because for us then, we have to prove that we are better than manufacturer A or B or C. Yeah. So then it becomes, bragging rights at that level. So then for sure, we are going to put more resources into it. But for us in India, we are not there yet. And I think part of it is that as a sport, I don't think we sort of showcase the fact that a manufacturer can get value out of this investment. And I think that's something as a promoter, we need to get our promoters to do more. That's part of it. I think also, we talked about, why the Polo is still being sold, right? And we are transitioning from this basic transport, and I think maybe some of the guys doing marketing for everybody else are still focused on, the mileage and that's
ROI.
it, and nothing else. And we need to work on the more dynamic aspects of it. I can't wait to see somebody else come in. I think with rallying, however, it's a different story. With Mahindra there, I think what they've done with the XUV 300, the amount of development they've done with that car is phenomenal. It's opened our eyes for sure. And we have some work to do. But again, it's for us, that is priority number 2 or 3.
So why is that priority number 2? The reason I ask you this is not because I'm a rallying fan. We'll come to that later. But you've got a manufacturer there.
Yes.
Okay. You've got a manufacturer that you can go head to head with.
Yes.
You've got a car.
Yes.
They've got an SUV. A car inherently is better handling. With the 500, we saw that.
Yep.
I drove your R2 car at the Kerala rally, and I was pretty quick with the car.
You
right?
did so quick stage times there.
So the car has speed in it. Now you put a better driver than me, and you will win the rally. So why did you not put in more effort into your rally program? Because you could have had more bragging rights, right? Other than Volkswagen winning the Volkswagen Ameo Cup, Volkswagen winning the Indian National Rally Championship would be big. You won it 1 year, but with a private year.
We won it last year.
But those were with private year teams, right? Not with your full factory outfit.
Look, for us with rallying, I mean, it's a difference. There are two reasons for that, right? First reason is that the way we work is that our planning is quite far ahead. So that means that I need to get my approvals and budgets and so on for, say, 2020 is already done, right? We had all the approvals done by June or July of last year. So we already knew what we were going to do for 2020. So for us to react, it takes us a little longer just because we are very, very frugal at the moment. I don't have the luxury of having a huge budget to throw at it. Then I could invest in few more people and some money, and we could definitely do something. So that's one aspect. We are extremely frugal at the moment. And the second thing is that, with rallying, our focus has been in supporting and strengthening the sport. So, for example, the amount of money we spend in rallying in terms of supporting all the privateers, I could very easily run a very competitive 2-car rally team with that money. But the minute I do that, I can't afford to support all the privateers. And so it's a question of which is better for the sport. Okay, in a way, yes, I don't get the bragging rights. But on the other hand, I now go to a rally and I see half of the grid.
Not half, 75%. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, 75% is Polo.
Yeah, so Polos. And so that to me is very satisfying. And the fact that people trust this car as their weapon of choice, I think is an achievement in itself.
So what does Volkswagen Motorsport do for customer racing or rallying?
So, several things, right? So, if you want to be involved in motorsport and you're looking for a car, then you can come to us. you can sit down with our engineers and decide in terms of which class of rallying or which class of racing you want to participate in and the level at which you want the car built. And we will happily build a car for you. Right? It can be to the point where we can give you a completely turnkey Group N car to a completely ready to rally car for the, for example, the INRC 1, which is all singing, all dancing, R2 spec Polo. Or we can, for example, build you a Polo for use in whether it's ITC or Super Stock. And the same thing, Polo, Vento, no problem.
Okay, how do they get in touch with you?
The best way is you can send a mail to us at motorsport@skoda-vw.co.in.
Okay, motorsport@skoda-vw.co.in.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, social media also works.
Social media works very well.
You guys are on what on Twitter?
We're on Twitter, we're on Insta, we're on Facebook. So
hit you up on social media. Your team will get in touch with them. Ballpark figures for a Group N rally car would be approximately?
Group N rally car, depending on spec again, can be as low as around 10-12 lakhs or as high as 18 lakhs if you go all singing, all dancing.
So like an R2 spec car would be?
No, an R2 spec car more expensive. So R2 spec cars will run anywhere from around 35 to 45 lakhs.
35 to 45 for an R2 spec car.
And same for our ITC cars are in the same ballpark.
And what kind of support do they get after buying the car from you?
For example, one of the things that we do not only for our customers who are buying cars from us, but for all customers. So we have our engineers at every single racing event. Racing or rally and motorsport event, right? So we are there. So anytime you have a question, whether it is dealing with chassis setup, damper setup, or something to do with the working on whether it's engine, electronics, whatever it may be, I have engineers that are always there. I am at most of the rallies and most of the races, and we are happy to answer questions and guide you in terms of.
So you get technical support at the event itself.
For sure.
So that's one.
Yeah.
Then
and we can actually, if somebody really wants to, and they can come to us and we can work it out, we can actually help run the car for you also. Especially if it's at the racetrack, it's easy for us to do because we are there during the National Racing Championship. Rallying, it's a little more expensive because we have to fly people out specifically to do that. But we are happy to do that and support people that way. So for us, it's about strengthening the sport. So
and also you provide parts support, right?
Definitely. The parts side of it is something we don't really talk about very much. But you can buy parts from us and they're at a considerable discount over what you would buy otherwise over the counter. Yeah,
so we need to clarify that this is purely for motorsport use.
Purely for motorsport use.
If you've pranked your car on the road, you're not going to get a headlamp cheap from Volkswagen Motorsport, right?
Definitely not. And we have our checks and that we use to make sure that it happens this way. But yes, this is purely for competition use. We can do all of this. And same thing with all our cars, when you buy them from us, you sign a declaration that this is a competition car and not for use on public roads. And actually, one thing we didn't talk about was the RX. You can buy the RX and use it as a track day car.
Has the development of the RX been done?
We've done, I would say, it's about 60% of the way there. Right?
I think we should cycle back and talk a little bit about the RX. So the RX was last year's winter project where you and a select bunch of your engineers worked on a rear-engined Polo.
Yes.
So it's not a mid-engine, but it's actually a mid-engine. So it's a mid-engine Polo. You've reversed the front end, put it at the back. So it's got the 1.8 TSI engine, sequential gearbox, rear-wheel drive, drift monster. I drove it for a short bit at that go-karting track in Nasik and it was sliding around all over the place. But like you said, the setup has still to be done. Right?
Yes, I mean, since the time you got to drive it, we've actually worked on it a little bit more. So the car is a lot better than it was. But we actually want to work on version 2 of that. Which hopefully will have a little bit more power. I'm thinking, about 300 should be good.
But can it handle the power that it's got right now?
Yes, actually, it's not bad. After we've set it up, it actually is pretty decent. It's fun to drive. It's chuckable. It points in so well. And it's like driving a big go-kart. That's the great thing about that car. So you turn it in and it points into the apex without any drama. You can put the power down on it quite easily now, but we want it to be a little bit quicker. I think we always need more power.
Of course, yeah. There's no end to it, right? So this is not a motorsport car because there is no series where this can participate in.
No.
So this is a pure track day car.
Yes.
This is not even road legal. So it's a pure track day fun car.
For sure.
That you just take to the racetrack or maybe a go-karting track, but go-karting track's a little too tight for it.
It's a lot more fun on a racetrack.
Yeah, so on a racetrack for a Sunday drive on a racetrack, what kind of costing are you going to put on it?
So the spec that we had it at initially was quite expensive because there's a lot of stuff done on it. But again, I think we are targeting in that probably maybe depending on if we go to even a 300 horsepower version, it should be more than around 55 lakhs at the top, which should be pretty good. And the best part is with not only that car, with any of our race cars. I mean, I think now we see a lot of supercar owners taking their cars out and doing track days with them, right? But it doesn't work out and it's not so nice on the wallet when you take one of the supercars out because you go do a weekend of track use and you have a set of tires gone. You do 2 weekends, you've got a set of brake pads gone. Then you do 3 weekends and a lot more maintenance to do. Whereas if you invest that 55 or whatever, 45 to 55 lakhs, depending on whether it's one of our Cup cars or the RX, you can have a car that you can go and all you have to do is throw tires at it and throw fuel in it and the thing will run and run and run. I guarantee you'll have a bigger smile than the supercar.
Yeah, and that is the joy of a motorsport vehicle, right?
For
a car that come out of motorsport factory.
Yeah.
It is built to take a hammering.
Yes.
It's not built for comfort. It's not built so that you can hear the stereo at 100 kilometers an hour. It's built for pure outright hardcore use.
Yes. And I mean, the great thing is, I think with the Cup cars, we are in the low 50s around Chennai, which is quicker than most of the supercars. So, yeah, we're not so far away.
Yeah. Have you beaten any lap records with your RX car? Or
not the RX. We haven't actually had a chance to do a lap record run with that. I think we'll try and do that maybe during the course of one of our events this year.
In terms of rallying, are you planning something for the 2020 season?
The biggest plan would be in terms of getting the new engines and drivetrains in. So we've got a lot of development work already going on with that. So that will be there, and let's see. I mean, we are trying to put a few other things together. Hopefully, we'll do a lot more in rallying now.
Yeah. Let's look at the bigger picture of Indian motorsport. Where is rallying heading? In the 7 years that you've been running Volkswagen Motorsport, have things changed? Have things changed for the better, for worse? What would you like to see happen?
Okay, I think in terms of the media side of it, for sure last year was much better. I think even before that it was sort of headed in the right direction. I think last year was a big step forward. But honestly, I think that, it starts from the top, right? As the FMSCI, I don't think we have enough, or I don't see enough of a long-term vision from the FMSCI in terms of where the sport is going to go and what the roadmap is for the sport. See, all of us are involved in the sport, but ultimately, we for example, you can ask me and I have a very clear picture of where I want to go. But that's me as Volkswagen, right? It's not the sport in general. So we need a visionary leader for the sport that can set this long-term view and then bring all of us along so that we contribute and make it happen. And I don't see that, not only in rallying, I don't see that in racing either. And we are so busy at the moment in terms of all the little nitty-gritty stuff in terms of regulations, because we have people like me involved and other competitors. We are all in it and we are the ones trying to formulate the rules and regulations. So all of us want to try and squeeze to get some advantage. And so you don't have this group of people who are removed from the sport in setting this direction, right? And I think that's what's missing, because the minute you have that, you have a vision, you define a roadmap, and then you bring all the people along and to help make that roadmap come true. And that's what I think is missing. And it's not only rallying, it's for racing and rallying and every other form of motorsport.
And is that one of the key reasons why there aren't any more manufacturers actively involved in motorsport?
I think that's probably part of it, but I think the reason for, look, ultimately for us to be involved, I mean, the reason why we do our one make championship is because we control everything around it, right? So we know what the messaging is, we know what the value we are generating out of it, whether it is our media coverage, whether it is our TV package, whatever it may be. So we already know what we are putting together. We know what to expect out of it, and then we can justify the investment. So that's the job of the promoter, right? So when you talk about motorsport, you talk about championships. The promoter's job is to monetize the championship. And I don't think we see that happening as well as it should, whether it be racing or rallying. And so there are several steps. So one, FMSCI needs to set the roadmap. They need to get the right promoters on board so that the promoters have a vision and have a way of monetizing the sport. The minute then you have a way of justifying this involvement. So for example, if you talk about ITC, why is it that there's no manufacturers involved? It's because, okay, what's a TV program? What's a TV package for it? What is the press coverage you're generating out of it? What's the value of all of this? So if I'm able to say, okay, I have to invest, say, maybe 1 crore or 2 crores to do a ITC program, but I'm getting media coverage or 10 crore out of it, then any of us will find it easy to go to our board and say, hey, listen, if we do this, it's the equivalent of doing 10 crores worth of advertising. So let's do this because it's a dynamic way to showcase our product. And this is the value we're getting out of it. And in addition to that, we can do all the other activations with this program. And so that's missing, right? Until we get that in place, you can't actually go to a manufacturer. Because I know that before we sort of got the turbo class regs in and brought turbocharged cars into ITC, I've been sort of working for a few years behind the scenes to try and get everybody on board and work towards this. I know we've invited a whole bunch of manufacturers to come and see what we are doing. And nobody turned up. I think the only manufacturer that came and accepted our invite, came over to have a look around, was Toyota. And that's it. And so because for us...
But then Toyota did do that racing, the ETS Cup racing series, but for 3 years and then that was it?
Yeah. I mean, so... I think, when I spoke to the guys over there, they're like, yeah, but you guys are doing everything in-house. How do we compete? And every manufacturer that's in India today have access, probably other than, have access to motorsport programs and motorsport engineers. Maruti has access to the people from Suzuki. Tata has people from JLR.
Hyundai
has their own motorsport department. Mahindra has their Formula E and other things that they are doing. So everybody, and Ford has a big motorsport program. I mean, Volvo has a motorsport program. So everybody has.
Everybody has.
Why don't they use it in India?
So why do they not do it? From you as an insider/outsider, why do they not do it?
I think it's a value proposition.
So basically it's the promoters, the federation needs to put something together to get manufacturers involved, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you were at the head of the federation, what would you do?
Look, one thing is today, we still don't know where we are going to take ITC. And to me, I'm happy that we have some major changes happening in ITC now, thanks to the turbo regulations. I think this year we should have a lot more cars, turbocharged cars there. But the fact is, ITC is the pinnacle of touring car racing in India. And what are the cars that are in it? You have a couple of Ventos, which you can actually go buy today, and nothing else that you can go buy.
True.
Why?
So for viewers, let's elaborate. So there's the Honda City VTEC, the 15-year-old Honda City VTEC, not the current VTEC. Then earlier you had the S-Teams.
There are still a few S-Teams running, and they will continue to run.
Yeah. So basically none of the modern cars that you can go to a showroom and buy or that you can even relate to are racing.
Yes.
So what does a spectator get out of coming to a race?
That's exactly the point. I mean, this is something I think actually the bike manufacturers are doing a much better job. Because even though they have a lot of one-make championships, they also are competing against one another a little bit. So you can go and for an average person, average spectator, you know, you go in, you sit in the stands and you watch a race. Hey, you know what? I can buy that. Or I own the same make. So for me, I have then a bond with that particular brand. And I'll support it in any way, or I'll follow it and I'll do other stuff. Then that's a whole different story. So we need to work on it from the FMSCI down.
So it's interesting that you talk about bike manufacturers, because TVS, they've been in racing for I think 35, 40 years now, right since they started with their mopeds. They've been continuously active in racing, and of late, over the past 2-3 years, all the products are getting TVS Racing branding. They got their race riders testing their vehicles. They got their race engineers involved in the road bike division, and vice versa. And there is a lot of motorsport within their products, both inside, in the technical side, and also visually, terms of TVS Racing stickers on their bikes. The scooter that I ride has got TVS Racing on it. Why does Volkswagen not do that? Why do you not have a Motorsport Edition Polo? You had a Polo 1.2 naturally aspirated car with spoilers and a big wing, but there's no motorsport in it, right? Why do you not have, like the GT-TSI, why do you not have a Cup edition, for instance?
We did have a Cup edition.
But that was nothing to do with the race cup, right?
It was a combination of stuff. I'd like to look at it that way. No, I think, you know, we've also evolved. We are evolving always. And I think... you know, there is a lot more integration with motorsport. I mean, we are more integrated with the brand team now. So you will see some things happen for sure. And which is why we are on the booth at Auto Expo. We are part of the press conference. So this is, I would say, the beginning of a different Volkswagen in India.
So is that part of the whole Skoda-Volkswagen merger? All the 5 entities all grouped together under one?
I think that has helped for sure, right? Earlier, we are based out of the factory. So we were based out of Volkswagen India Private Limited. The sales and marketing was run out of the Bombay office, which was Volkswagen Group Sales India Private Limited. So yes, it was 2 separate entities, and that's one. And second thing, we are 130 kilometers apart. So combination of both of these, I think we had our own hurdles. But now we are one entity, we are one company, and even though we are still in 2 different locations, I think the intention is that we are a lot more closely associated. And I think Stefan and the entire team over there are working towards this. I think one of the things also you'll notice is in terms of our one-make championship over the past couple of years, we've evolved in terms of the story that we tell, whether it is through TV and or all the OTT platforms and so on. The messaging is different. And we've moved away from covering it just as pure motorsport, where we broadcast it and we have it on a pure sports channel, where we get like, you know, maybe a few or a couple of lakh people actually watching it. To now, where last year I think we had some 45 or 50 million people that had that viewed all of our online content. So we've changed and we've invested quite heavily in it as a brand. And so we are looking at doing a lot more with this. And so we have got lots of things that we are working on behind the scenes. Unfortunately, not everything, none of it is mature enough to the point where we can talk about it. But yes, there is work happening.
So now there is more integration between road cars and the motorsport side?
There always
will be.
There's more integration now in terms of the marketing side of it, right? On the engineering side, there always has been integration, right? Because all of the R&D side was based at the Pune plant. We are an extension of R&D. So for example, when we had all the cars that in rallying, so the failures that we had in rallying, a lot of that information gets fed back to R&D. So when they're working on the next generation of cars or next generation of product, they take some of this information and then they make the product more robust. So that has been happening, that continues to happen. And not only in that way, but the cool thing is that because we are with motorsport, as you're aware, you know, our timelines are extremely tight. So we have the ability of making magic happen. So the R&D guys use us a lot of times for whether it's developing a prototype or whether it is evaluating some new ideas that they may have. So it isn't the final evaluation per se, but we can do a very quick evaluation and tell them, yes, it's worth pursuing or not.
Okay.
So once we say, yes, this is worth pursuing, then they go back and they do the big long process that they have in terms of evaluating an idea and bringing it from a design stage to having something that's saleable to a customer.
Coming back to the bike example, for bike races, you see a lot of spectators in the stands.
Yes.
In the recent times I've come for one of your races, there have been nothing, no spectators. What is the problem? Why do you not have spectators at your races? Because aren't those guys who will eventually become drivers or followers for your program?
Well, yes, I would love to do a lot more with spectators. But again, I think for us, the way we've sort of moved the program in terms of budgets, I don't have the luxury of spending a lot of money doing activations. So we haven't done enough. We are working on trying to do more. But the big problem is also, I think, infrastructure. So for example, if you go to a BIC, right, you have this massive big grandstand that's there. Permanent structure. You've got toilets there, you've got place there for vendors to set up and sell food and so on. So it's easy for us to then activate and bring guests in. Sure. So ultimately, the way I look at it, a spectator who's coming to one of our events is a guest of ours. So I need to be able to look after them in terms of providing for the basic necessities. It doesn't mean that I have to cater food for them, right? But at least there needs to be a place for them, clean toilets, a place that they can get water, a place they can get food. So all of this for us to do and set the infrastructure up is a huge chunk of money, which at the moment we don't have the luxury of spending, but we are working on trying to do something. I know that the guys at MMSC and the MMRT are working on setting up a permanent grandstand. Okay. So they've been working towards that. Hopefully that will come up fairly soon. The minute that comes up, then it becomes easier for us to do these activations. It's purely a financial thing for us. If I had more money and I didn't have to spend it on my cars, then for sure I would do that. But every rupee we get, we are spending it on running the One Make Championship and in supporting rallying.
Do you think there's a bit of fatigue associated with the racing that you've been doing? Okay, you've been switching body shells.
Yeah.
But the format has remained more or less the same. Stuff like push to pass that you all have been talking about for years, that is still not come in.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying the push to pass will bring out 10,000 spectators, but it's the same format. It's the same cars. Your drivers also, okay, you get fresh drivers every year, but these are not big names that will draw in a crowd.
No.
So how do you inject some more life into your motorsport activities? 10 years of the cup racing.
Yeah.
What's next? What do you do to reset and really go the next level?
Okay, so there are two aspects to this, right? I think the Cup Series, the way we run it, is essential for India. The reason is that we are now the entry point for people getting into motorsport. We don't have karting as strong as it used to be. So earlier, where we used to run our series, where we used to take everybody from karting into our championship. That was because there was a huge influx of young drivers into karting. And I think overall the sport has sort of stagnated over the past few years, right? So karting is the foundation. The minute you have fresh blood coming into karting, they will graduate then into whether it's the FLGB or the MRF 1600 or whatever, or to our championship. So if that happens, then I can always look at running a championship with cars that are more on edge. But we are now the entry point. So the reason why our championship has stayed the way it is because it's working. Every year I have 1,500, 1,600 people that want to be a part of the championship. And then we whittle it down to where 120 people that come for driver selection, out of which we pick about 20 drivers. So that's something that's still going on. There is still excitement about it. But to get the sport really more exciting, actually we need to graduate away and we need to compete against everybody else.
Yeah.
Which was the entry point for us to get into ITC. But that is where the focus should be. And that's where we need to leverage our presence and leverage what we are doing to sort of make sure that we are competing, make sure there's more excitement, and also make it the program that everybody comes to watch. But that actually, unfortunately, we are one of the stakeholders. We are not the be-all and end-all of that championship. So it's difficult. I mean, we are pushing, but we are, like I said, one stakeholder, and we have to also be careful because the majority of people are privateers. And this is something that, we cannot push them to go into a direction where, yes, for us it makes sense, but then it becomes something that is unsustainable from a privateer perspective.
I want to talk about your partners also. You have now MRF as your tire partner. How do you develop tires with MRF?
Well, they actually have been a very active partner with the program, right? The amount of effort that they put in for our tires is unbelievable. And it's great. So, for example, when we started the program, I think we did, I can't remember the number of days of testing we did when we switched over to MRF at the beginning. But I know then, if I remember correctly, we had, I think, 4 or 5 different compounds. And we had, I think, about 3 or 4 different constructions of each compound.
Okay.
Right? So we evaluated all of these.
So that's like 20-25 different kind of tires.
Yes. So we evaluated all of these combinations and permutations. And then we sort of shortlisted things down to about 3 or 4. And then we started looking at, okay, what can we do? How is it? How reliable is it? How robust is this compound? How long will it last? What's the drop-off we're looking at? And so on. I know that some of the stuff we've tried with them, we can get tires that are 3 to 4 seconds a lap quicker than what we're running today.
So why are you not doing that?
Because ultimately for us, we want the tire to be consistent. Right? So if the tire today, I can do 40 to 50 laps on a set of tires, and on the 50th lap, maybe I'm a second and a half off of the first lap, which is pretty incredible. And for a one-make championship, that's what you want. If I was doing, for example, the ITC, I'd want the 3-second a lap quicker tire for sure. And I know they can go even more than that. They have the technology. They're doing a lot of R&D. I think they're actually doing world-class stuff because I've had the fortunate, I've been very fortunate to have worked with a lot of the international tire manufacturers in my previous career. And some of the stuff that we are doing with MRF is on par or above what I worked with at the top level of motorsport.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what?
So, for example, when we were working with the guys from Avon, when we were doing tire development for us, when we were doing it on the panels, we did, I think again, because it wasn't a custom tire for us, it was something off the shelf that they had to sort of modify for us a little bit. We were able to get one level of work. But when we were working with Michelin, it was something incredible. We had a Michelin engineer could walk up and tell you, yep, okay, when we were racing at Le Mans, he would be at 3 in the morning. I'm like, okay, he will tell me, yes, the track temperature is this, ambient air temperature is this. You know what, this is the compound you need to run, and I guarantee you are going to be 2 seconds a lap quicker than the tire you're on now. And that thing you can do a triple stint on, no dramas. And we would do it, and we would get that result. With MRF, again, I think, they've got Sundar, who's our partner over there, who does all of the engineering for the tires. Incredible amount of experience. He can tell you that if you do this, this is what you get. And it is a partnership, right? So they rely on us to provide them the data. Then they will analyze it and come back to us with solutions. So the reports that go back and forth are quite intense, quite complex, with lots of data that are going across. And then it's so much easier for them to take all of this information and say, okay, so this is what we've got. Okay, so this is what you need. So it's been a fantastic relationship.
So it's been 3-4 years working with
4
MR?
years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Since the first set of tires that you all raced on to the ones that you all are racing on, say at the end of last year, how much quicker have the tires become?
Actually, we've not gone quicker.
Okay.
The reason is that when ITC moved to 17-inch tires, we actually went harder with the compound.
Okay.
And the reason we went harder with the compound was because when we first tested with the ITC cars, with the Vento Cup car, we could do 45 laps on a set of tires. ITC cars were burning up tires after 5 laps.
That's because of the power.
It's not necessarily power. I think it's a combination of everything.
Okay.
Right? So the ITC cars, when they were running with the 15-inch tires, have bigger sidewall. So that means the tire doesn't react as violently as the short sidewall tire, the smaller sidewall. And I think the way they were driving, the way they had the car set up, and also the fact that the cars were so much lighter, the tire and car combination, the chassis combination worked a certain way. The minute you change the tire, you actually have to go back and work on the chassis. And they hadn't done that when we were testing. I think they went back and have done, a lot of them have gone back and done it, which is why they are able to get the life out of the tires now. And we are now at the stage where, okay, we can actually go back softer. So this is something we are actually in discussions with MRF about. So let's see how it pans out over the next sort of couple of months.
Sirish, before you came to India, before you started, you were working on tuner cars and all that before working with joining Volkswagen Motorsport. You had a solid international career in America at Le Mans. What got you into motorsport and what all did you do?
Oh, wow. Actually, I've always been a car nut. And I wouldn't say a car nut, I've been a petrol head.
Okay, you've been a guy. Every boy is a car nut, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. I think probably the cool thing for me was that my mom, when she was in India, used to be involved in all the gymkhanas and stuff that used to happen.
Okay.
I had an uncle who always was doing something or the other to his car, shaving the head over here, different exhaust, Mikuni carb or a Weber carb or whatever. So he's always been doing different stuff. Then I had another, this is my mom's brother, and the other brother was the guy who was into anything with bikes. So he used to do some motocross stuff and do some hill climbs and stuff on his bikes. So that was always there. And I think the big step, I was fortunate enough that my parents moved to the US. Then suddenly everything was so much more accessible. So right from the time I was in high school, on weekends I used to go with, my neighbors were into cars and stuff. So I used to go help them with stuff on the racetrack. And that's how I sort of got involved into the professional motorsport side of it. Then when I was at engineering at Purdue, it was the same thing. I did the Formula SAE back then. There was only one competition then at the Detroit Silverdome parking lot. So I did that, and while I was working on that program and I was finding sponsors and so on, I got in touch with Pi Research, who was a company that was specialized in data acquisition and electronic control systems. And that's how I got my first, second job actually. So the first job was, that was one, and there was another company called Motorsport Spares in Indianapolis. They were sort of dealers for a lot of motorsport parts, whether you're talking about brakes, air-equipped hoses and so on. So I used to call and bug them so much for parts and discounts and everything. They said, hey, listen, we set up during the month of May, which is Indy month, we set up a shop at the Speedway. I need some help for somebody to come and look after that. Are you interested? I jumped at it. So I was there. I used to, every day in the morning, wake up, go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to open up the shop over there and sell parts to all these race teams. And so that was one summer. Then the next summer I was working for Pi Research doing that was when they were launching the System 1, which is their karting data acquisition system. And so I got involved then with them, and I actually got to work with a lot of the, now famous race car drivers. Your Patrick Longs and Danica Patricks and so on. Ryan Hunter-Ray. All of these guys, I remember seeing them as little kids in karts. And so I got to work with all of them. Of course, then I did a good enough job with that that I ended up doing a lot of different stuff with Pi Research. I was involved in supporting the different teams all over the place, whether it was karting, did Indy Lights, Formula Atlantics, sports car racing. I used to go to Montreal to support the F1 race over there. I was there as one of the people that was helping with some of the teams that were running our kit back then. So I got a chance to do a lot of this stuff. Got to work with Top Fuel dragsters, a little bit of NASCAR stuff. So I got to see a lot of motorsport, tremendous amount of exposure, opened my eyes. And then I was given an opportunity to work for Panos when they entered into sports car racing. So I was the dedicated support engineer for them. Every time a Panos ran, I was there with from Pi Research. Of course, then they said, you know what? We don't want to go through Pi. We want you to come and work. We've got other things also we want you to do. This was my boss back then, a guy called Tony Dow. Right? So Tony is the guy that used to run Jaguar's sports car program, the TWR program in North America. So he hired me, and then from there I progressed into being one of the race assistant engineer, and then a race engineer, and then I started looking after all the customer cars. So that was the best part, and I actually used to do some design work also on the cars. So back to my mechanical engineering roots, right? So I did that, and so I've been very, very, very fortunate to be able to experience that.
What was Le Mans like?
You know what? We can talk for 3 days about it.
Did you sleep at all for those 24 hours?
No, actually, you don't sleep for about 40 hours.
Okay.
Right? Because you get there when I was doing it, I did it, I think, 7 years or something like that. When I was doing it, the race used to start at 4. Now it starts at 3. And so you would get there at probably like by 7 in the morning, if I remember correctly, on a Saturday morning for the warm-up. And then you're on it all the way till you finish and go home on Sunday night to the hotel, which is usually around 9 p.m. Because the race finishes around 4, but then you have to pack everything into the garages, so that takes a few hours. Then you have to wait for the cars to be released from Parc Fermé. So by the time they get done, come back 7:30, you're done, or maybe 8 o'clock. Then you get back to the hotel, have dinner, chill out. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night on Sunday, you go to sleep. That was an absolutely incredible experience.
And there's no race like that?
Nothing in the world compares.
Nothing. Does the Indy 500 compare to that?
No, I think Indy 500 cannot. I mean, Indy 500 is different. Okay? But I think the reason Le Mans is Le Mans, okay, from my perspective, right? Because you're awake the whole time. You are so tired at the end of the day. And see, Indy 500, you've got 2.5 mile, no problem. Anything happens, you can make it back to pits without too many dramas. At Le Mans, you're talking about 8.5 miles of track, and you have tremendous amount of weather change occurring over the course of the 24 hours. And I think, as they say in, Audi's Truth in 24, right?
Yeah, yes.
That captures a lot of it. Of course, Steve McQueen's Le Mans, and now Ford versus Ferrari. It always rains at Le Mans. I think there's been only 1 year where we had no rain in all the years I've been there. But it's because it is so long, and you are so tired, and you've been awake for so long. You are so emotional at the end of the 24 hours, and just finishing Le Mans is a bigger achievement than winning a lot of other races. And so for me, I'm fortunate. I think we finished 5th, which is the best finish for a Panos. So I'm proud of that. Being, this young 20-something-year-old Indian origin engineer and running this car over there, I think it was a phenomenal achievement. And that's something I will never, ever, ever forget. But Indy 500, back then in the sort of late 80s, early 90s was a different animal to what it is today. The crowd that we used to get at Indianapolis was incredible. I mean, I know people that used to wait for people literally. I mean, it sounds very morbid when I say it, but you would only get seats in the stands if somebody died and didn't renew their seats, right? Otherwise, you would never be able to buy seats in the stands at Indy. Whereas today it's different. I mean, you can actually get seats whenever you want, almost. So it was different. But even then, that doesn't compare to what it is. I mean, I think we used to have 400,000 plus people in attendance at Le Mans. You're doing this, you've got the best of the best in terms of manufacturers, the best of the best in terms of drivers, and of course engineers. And you're all pushing each other. And Le Mans, the big thing is that 8.5 miles. So back then we used to use probably 8 plus liters a lap. And you had a 90-liter tank. And so you are struggling to get the maximum fuel economy out of the car, because if you come in and you have, if you don't optimize fuel economy, you don't have enough to do that one extra lap. And if you don't do the extra lap, that means that you're giving up and you're coming in for a pit stop 1 lap earlier than everybody else.
So you'll end up doing 1 or 2 pit stops more than your competitors.
Yeah. So it's such a unique experience.
Listen, I think you're right. We'll be talking about this for the next 3 hours. Let's sort of end. I want to end with careers.
Yeah.
How does somebody become a Sirish Vissa? How does somebody get involved in motorsport? What are the opportunities and avenues available in India?
I would say in India, unfortunately, avenues are quite limited. There is us. There are a few other companies who are doing things on a professional level.
So do you have an internship program?
We do have interns that keep coming in through our program.
How do they apply?
So the best way is to same thing. And they reach out to us.
Motorsport at Skoda-Volkswagen.co.in.
Skoda-VW.
Okay. Motorsport at Skoda-VW.co.in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's the best way to reach out to us. And we do have internships, but technical internships fewer than we have marketing and everything else. Other than that, that's the best way. I'm hoping that we have some development going on with the racing league over there.
Okay.
Because the minute that comes in and it gets motorsport more professional, I think it'll open up more
The racing league, you're talking about the X1 Racing League?
X1
which
Racing
Aditya
League.
and Arman have floated?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that kicks off and they are able to sort of keep that going. And I think that's what we need. Other than that, it isn't easy to build a career in motorsport in India because the jobs are so limited. You have to go international. And to go international, motorsport is still very traditional in a way, in that unless you bring something super special to the table, the only way of doing it is you have to do it like an apprenticeship, right? Okay. So you go in, start somewhere, any job, and you have to work your way up. Because this is a sport that is very, very close. It's a tight family. And so we don't allow people to come in very easily. And so you have to come in, work your way up. I mean, I've done everything from wash rims to, do tires to everything else before I got a break. And it's the same way. I mean, I can't think of any other answer.
So you are saying marketing would be an easier way to get into motorsport?
Yes.
So you don't have to be an engineer, right? You can learn on the job.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
In India, you will.
Yeah, you'll have to do it, right? Yep. So marketing would be a good way. Social media would be a good way.
Yes, definitely.
Because now you need to reach out to a wider audience. Yeah. What better way than social media, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Your group, okay? Audi has always done a lot of motorsport.
Yeah.
Skoda is very big into rallying. A lot of other forms of motorsport. Why only Volkswagen?
Well, honestly speaking, I think we are trying to see, and I know there's been discussions with Skoda about doing something in motorsport in India, but nothing's materialized yet. From Audi's perspective, or Porsche's perspective for the matter, they don't have an avenue for them to do anything in India, right? They are involved at the sharp end of the stick, so to speak, whether it's the GTLM cars or you're talking about the R8 LMS and all the other stuff. Those are expensive cars. You're talking about cars that are 350 to 500,000 euro per car. and it requires a budget of a few 100,000 or €1,000,000 to run for a season. But first thing is there is no championship for them to run in India. And in addition to that, when you look at it as a business, right? When you sell a few thousand cars a year, how do you make that viable when you're now suddenly spending a couple of million euros to try and do something like this? So it doesn't make sense in India yet. But you never know. I think like we've had, for example, F1 had a brief stint in India. If we get somebody like Asian Le Mans series, or we get the Blancpain series come through India, then for sure I think it'll interest some of these guys. But other than that, I don't see an easy way, actually.
You make race cars in India, you make rally cars in India.
Yeah.
Why do you not have an export program? Or do you have an export program?
We do not at the moment. And the reason is that we still are using the PQ platform, whereas everybody else has moved on to the MQB.
Yeah.
So the reason why we haven't is because that's one aspect. And the second thing is the minute you start talking about an export customer program, you need to do a lot more in terms of the way you engineer the car and how well it's engineered, because now you cannot afford to have an engineer at every event. So your documentation and all of this needs to be a lot more meticulous. And for us to do that, we are not equipped to do at the moment. That would require at least 3 or 4 more engineers to be able to get all of this in place. But that is something that we would like to do in the future, because we are moving also to MQB. And for us, we would like to do a lot more in the region. So we would love to do something in Sri Lanka, maybe Malaysia, Indonesia, all of the Southeast Asian side of it. And of course, you've also got countries like, the Dubai and Abu Dhabi and places where they have tracks. They are doing a lot of track days and stuff. We are looking at doing things there, but nothing yet.
You'd be excited with Skoda Volkswagen's first MQB product. It's an SUV.
Yes.
Right? Do you have your eyes set on the Raid de Himalaya or the Desert Storm?
I think it would make sense to do something like that. But I'm not sure if Raid is still happening, because I know it didn't run last year. I'm not sure what's happening over there. But if they do run it like that, I mean, that would be an ideal place to launch something like that. I would love to do it. I just have to convince my board now.
Yeah, you just have to get the budget.
Yeah, for sure.
Final question. The drivers. Now, the Polo Cup, Vento Cup, Ameo Cup, it's all grassroots motorsport.
Yes.
Your whole aim is to grow and develop drivers.
Yeah.
Take drivers to the next level.
Yeah.
Today, if you win the Ameo Cup, where do you go to?
So
what do you get?
So if you take one step back, right? So if you come into the championship, we run essentially 2 concurrent championship with our Cup series. So you run a junior and you run a pro. So the junior means that you are under 26 years and you've raced in less than 8 races anywhere in a car. So that makes you a junior. So the minute you're a junior, if you win that, you get a sponsored drive into the pro category for the next season.
Okay.
If you win the pro category, you get a sponsored drive into our ITC car. We used to put them into a single-seater earlier, but we found that not everybody is able to transition from a touring car to a single-seater. And from a career point of view, I think a touring car makes more sense because you've got a lot more TCR championships and things running globally, and then from there to GT racing. That makes a lot more sense than going to single-seater, because F1 is already not achievable for everybody, because unless you start karting at 3 or 4 or 5, you're not going to get there. So we've started doing that. And then also we always do a driver exchange program. So if you win the championship, not only do you get an ITC drive for the next season, but you also get to go and race in something like Polo Cup South Africa, which is extremely competitive.
Yeah, because those South Africans come to India, they haven't seen the racetrack, and immediately they're whooping us. What does that tell you about the kind of drivers that we have over here?
I think that, that's the reason why we bring them over, right? So the idea for us to bring them over is that we want to show what the benchmark, and set a benchmark as to where levels are, so you can recalibrate yourself. Because if you're winning everything in a small little championship, then you always feel like you're the champion of the world. But then somebody comes in and then whoops your butt. Then you're like, oh, maybe I have some more improvement to do. And that's the reason why we do it. And that's the reason why we also take them over there. Because doing it here is one thing. But going over there and gives you an idea how competitive the sport is globally. And that then is a good way for them to move forward.
What do you think of the talent pool that we have here?
You know what? We actually have a lot more undiscovered talent. The reason is that, you know, with our championship, it's still quite expensive for India, even though it's heavily subsidized. It's 9.5 lakhs a year, which is still quite pricey. It's not achievable for the average middle class person.
Yeah.
And also, most of the people that come into our championship come from the metros. We are not going out to the tier 2, tier 3 cities yet. And that's where I think we will find the next great talent. And I think we are always trying to put and make this program self-sustaining in the sense that we are trying to get better partners in. I know Venky's is one of our partners. They put in a lot of money into our program. And we are working with other people like Venky's to try and grow this into a sport where we can offer more of a subsidy for these drivers and try to bring them in. So that's the goal. I hope we get there soon. And that's what we need to do, because then we can actually find these drivers that would otherwise not get discovered, bring them in, and then give them a career path and break them grow into something else.
The current drivers that we have, do you see anybody having potential?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I think I don't need to mention Jehan Narwala is doing really well. Both, I think Arjun and Kush Maini for sure. They already represent India on a global platform. When you talk about touring car side of it, I think Karthik Tharani, who's come through our program, is definitely a future talent. And other than him, you've got, you know, Anindit Reddy, lots of talent over there. Those two guys are people to keep your eyes open. And of course, coming through our series, we've got a couple of Bangladeshi drivers who are pretty quick.
Great, okay.
And we've got a few more drivers who have been part of our series that are very, very quick. That I think need to make that big step. So there is a lot of talent out there, not all of whom are able to sustain it. And that's where we need to try and find more partners.
I hope you do. I hope you do find more partners, and I hope the Polo Cup grows into something even bigger. I hope you do more in terms of rallying also. And I wish you all the best for the 2020 season.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll see you in Delhi next week for the unveil of your Polo Cup car. I hope it's got mad wings and all that. And I hope...
I have no idea.
Yeah, and I hope that translates into something from the road car side. So that people can directly make that relation, that this is the car that's racing on the track and this is the car that I can buy on the road. And that is what I hope will help your whole motorsport effort.
Thank you. We are trying.
Thanks, Sirish. Thank you for making time. Always a pleasure talking to you. I know this has been a long podcast, but there's so much to talk about in terms of Indian motorsport. If you like this podcast, do like, subscribe, share, give us your feedback, let us know what we're doing right and wrong. And next week, we'll see you for our Auto Expo podcast. It's going to be a huge week for the Indian automotive industry. A lot of launches from the Volkswagen Group. We're going to see the new Skoda SUV, the new VW SUV, the new SUVs to take on the Seltos, Creta, their big push for India with the MQB platform, a whole load of new manufacturers coming in. It's going to be exciting times for the Indian industry. Hopefully exciting times for Indian motorsport. Hopefully all your fellow manufacturers will also have some motorsport concepts and some concrete plans for doing racing / rallying / drag racing in India. Hope you like the podcast and see you next week. Subscribe to the Evo India channel and hit the bell icon to keep pace with the thrill of driving.